Imagine for a moment a man who was both vilified and celebrated in his time. A man who held the highest office in the land during one of its most challenging periods, yet was also a global humanitarian. This man was none other than Herbert Clark Hoover, the 31st President of the United States. Born on August 10, 1874, to a Quaker family in West Branch, Iowa, Hoover's early life was marked by hardship. Orphaned at a young age, he found a new home in Oregon, where he was raised by his uncle. He would go on to be one of the first graduates of the newly established Stanford University in 1895. After graduation, Hoover's career took him far from the American heartland. He worked as a mining engineer in Australia and China, gaining considerable wealth along the way. But it was the outbreak of World War I in 1914 that truly marked a turning point in Hoover's life. He organized and led the Commission for Relief in Belgium, an international relief organization that provided food to occupied Belgium. As the United States entered the war in 1917, President Woodrow Wilson appointed Hoover to lead the U.S. Food Administration. His successful management of the country's food resources earned him the moniker Food Czar. Post-war, he led the American Relief Administration, feeding millions in Central and Eastern Europe. This humanitarian service won him the admiration of many, and he became a favorite among progressives. Hoover's political career took off when he served as the Secretary of Commerce under Presidents Warren G. Harding and Calvin Coolidge. An active and visible cabinet member, he influenced the development of air travel and radio, and led the federal response to the Great Mississippi Flood of 1927. In 1928, Hoover secured the Republican nomination for president and defeated his Democratic opponent, Al Smith, in a landslide. He took office in 1929, a time of economic stability, but this tranquility was short-lived. The stock market crash later that year signaled the onset of the Great Depression, which would become the defining event of Hoover's presidency. His response to the Depression, however, was met with widespread criticism. He was accused of being indifferent to the suffering of millions of Americans. His presidency was further marred by the Mexican repatriation campaign, a forced migration that saw between 1.5 and 2 million Mexican Americans sent back to Mexico, a majority of whom were U.S.-born. In 1932, Hoover lost his bid for re-election to Democratic nominee Franklin D. Roosevelt. After his presidency, Hoover's retirement spanned over 31 years, one of the longest amongst U.S. presidents. He penned numerous works and became increasingly conservative, fiercely criticizing Roosevelt's New Deal policy and foreign affairs. Despite the negative assessments of his presidency, Hoover's reputation saw a resurgence in the 1940s and 1950s. His service in various assignments for Presidents Harry S. Truman and Dwight D. Eisenhower, including chairing the influential Hoover Commission, improved his public image. Herbert Hoover's story is a complex one. He was a man of many facets, a global humanitarian, a successful engineer, and a president who led during some of America's darkest days. His life serves as a reminder that history is not simply black and white, but rather a rich tapestry of grays, woven together by the actions, decisions, and circumstances of those who have come before us.